The old man in her closet. Her living room smelled of old wool and sandalwood. I desperately wanted to open a window and let in some fresh air, but this was the first time I had spent an entire evening at her place, and I didn't want to make myself overly comfortable. She lived in the top flat of an Edwardian building, and her apartment was in immaculate condition. The fixtures and details were all original. The wooden floors were freshly polished, and the antique furnishings were from the exact period as the house. Along the far wall, there was a bookcase full of 19th century literature, mostly Russian. I scanned the titles for a while, settled on Fathers and Sons, and sat down on the couch to read. An hour quickly passed when suddenly a rustling sound came from the closet in the corner. I ignored it at first, assuming the noise had come from the apartment below. Then a couple of minutes later, I heard it again, only this time it was followed by a loud thump. I went to the door and put my ear against it. A gruff male voice could be heard, muttering curses and shuffling about inside. I dashed back to the couch, grabbed the book, and pretended to be reading. Seconds later, the door flung open, and an old man emerged, unshaven and wearing a dirty gray trench coat. He looked at me, said nothing, and headed straight for the bathroom, leaving behind the overwhelming smell of stale tobacco and liquor. After finishing in the bathroom, he opened the front door and left. Once I was certain he was gone, I went over to the closet and peeked inside. Her closet was the size of a small bedroom, and the racks were packed tightly with clothing. Everything was neatly separated by type and color. There were long black cashmere coats, short black wool jackets, vintage furs, camel-colored blazers, 1940s gabardine jackets in jewel tones, and 1950s crop jackets in black wool. There was even an entire shelf with handbags lined up like soldiers. Black leather, black alligator, brown alligator, patent leather, brown suede. She must have had one to match every conceivable type of shoe. Resting atop a small built-in bureau was a jewelry shop box overflowing with brooches and strands of pearls. It was in every way the closet of a princess. But off in the far corner, beneath the long black coats, the edge of a green military blanket could be seen poking out. Sitting beside that was a rusty tin can filled with cigarette butts. When she finally woke up that morning, I made us both a pleasant breakfast of coffee and toast. I never mentioned anything about what I had seen. But that night, while enjoying a lovely meal at Boulevard, I made the mistake of bringing it up. We had just polished off 2 New York strips and a bottle of Bordeaux, and were discussing Dostoevsky. All of our discussions had always been kept rigidly confined to either Russian literature or the psychology of 20th century totalitarianism, her 2 favorite subjects. She was in the middle of telling me something having to do with the bordello scene and notes from Underground, when finally I got up the nerve to ask her. By the way, I said, pouring the last few drops of wine into her glass, do you know you have an old man living in your closet? She raised an eyebrow and stared stone-faced back at me. And, she said, oh, nothing, I just wasn't sure if you knew, that's all. She must have felt sorry for me at this point, for I was clearly embarrassed. My cheeks turned bright red, and I began anxiously looking about for the waiter. Then her face softened, and the smallest hint of a smile appeared. So you want to know about my old man, do you? You want to know about all of that, she said with a laugh. Then she quickly changed the subject to Grushenka in the Brothers Karamazov.